Welcome back to another episode of the Brew and Ink podcast. This is season 3.
Well, welcome to Brew and Ink podcast. This is episode 4 of the new season of the midnight showing murder mystery. I have here tonight Katie.
Hello, hello.
I have Evie.
Hey.
I have Bill.
Yep.
And I have Steven.
What's up, y'all?
And we are here doing this next episode. I hope you guys have been enjoying the murder mystery. We have been having a lot of fun. Obviously, we haven't been getting the votes that we thought maybe we would get. But maybe you guys will make up for that when it's time to pick the killer.
Oh, yes.
It's time to choose who done it. Maybe we can push some of that out a little bit more and make sure we get some engagement, so to speak, on that. So how are you guys doing tonight?
Doing good.
Good. Fat and happy.
Fat and happy. That's like the third time she said it tonight, so I'm starting to believe her. So tonight we thought we would talk about notes, because for writers, we have a lot of ideas, and they're not always winners, but we usually think they are. But one of the most frustrating things that can happen to a writer is when you have an idea that you think is a winner, and then you don't write it down, and then you forget it.
Yeah.
Right? There's actually a whole episode of Seinfeld I watched recently where this happened, and so, but it's a very common thing for a lot of writers. Like, oh, I had this great idea, but I didn't write it down. And I remember when I first started writing, I started keeping a pad near my bed, like on my bedside table, because like I would wake up in the middle of the night and have these flashes of what I thought genius, right? And I would and of course I could barely read my writing because I can't read my writing anyway.
Yep.
And not to mention scrawled like all like cattywampus. That's a word for you.
Yeah.
On this, pad of paper in the middle of the night in the dark, right? I'm just writing, and it's like words all on top of each other. So all that to say is that's something that we all kind of deal with. So Bill, how do you do notes like that?
I have several ways of doing it, and I have one that I've settled on for story notes for ideas. Okay. I use OneNote, which crosses over between my phone and my computers, so pretty much no matter where I'm at, I'll have some way to put things directly in if I want. So usually in my pocket, I've got this little 3x5.
Hey, that is little.
I got one of these little notepads from one of these little flip open Mead notepads, and that's my daily list of things to do, because if I put that in a phone, I'll break the phone. If I put it in, an electronic device of some sort. So this is just my notes, and I'll write down a story idea or a note that I have, or just a one-liner or whatever in this usually. And as soon as I get a chance to translate it over to OneNote, I'll do that. I'll put it into OneNote, usually break it out into a paragraph or two. If it's something that's exceptional and I've already got a title idea for it, I'll title it and probably give it its own page there. And then maybe someday I'll come back to it. Now, in fact, you guys have seen some of the stories that I've written already, and those almost always were something I wrote down a note and I let it simmer for a while.
Yep.
And often what I was looking for, oddly enough, was a better title, because I almost invariably I have a hard time writing without knowing what the title is going to be.
It makes sense. Yeah.
Even if it's the wrong title, and that can be changed later. But that's one of the things that I use. I use OneNote as the base, and then the other place I go is the next step of the process is either an outline or just an extended synopsis. I'll go with a log line, because I need to know it's a 1 sentence to 2 sentences sometimes, breakdown of the story. I need to know that the story is something that's clear enough and concise enough that it can be put in one line. And if it can go there, then I can keep going. If I can't get there and I can't get a log line, then I can't go. Even if that log line changes later, and often it will. But then I'll do a paragraph or two, and then I'll do usually it amounts to a really brief outline. And once I get through that, that's my notes. That's what I work from. And that outline will always change, because I'm very character driven in my writing, and I'll start writing and I'll see that I'm breaking away from that outline because the characters are breaking away from that outline. And I'll often go back and I'll rewrite the outline. I'll I'll just change that.
That's how I did all my research papers. Wrote the paper first, and then did the outline.
Yeah,
And then-
sometimes
and
you
then
have to.
refine
Because
the
it's always
paper
gonna
to the
change.
outline.
So it's a process, and different people have different processes for writing, and some people have to, they write an outline out, and it's like, and once that outline's there, that's in stone. I'm going to stick to that no matter what. And I've tried that. I can't do it, but essentially the idea, the concept of having a place to put my notes, and I've got probably starts to 30 or 40 stories. Some are under screenplays, some are under novels, some are under short stories. I've had short stories that became long stories. Mm-hmm. I had a short story that became a completely different story. I started to write the story and said, well, this is just boring, but this guy, the character, had a good idea in the story, and that turned into something. So that's what those notes are valuable for to me, not just for the idea I had initially. I could be out on a walk during the day and come up with a great idea for a story, and it's a complete flop. But if you dare to sit down and start writing some of those things, sometimes they'll turn into something that's a lot better, even if the original idea wasn't that appealing even to you or to me. Sometimes it'll turn into something a lot better just by starting to write. And then it goes back to that whole, you've started to carve on a piece of stone, now you need to figure out what it's going to be.
Right, yeah. Yeah. What about you, Katie?
Largely, I take notes on Skype. I've got a writing buddy, and that's how we chat. And so whether she wants to hear it or not, or whether it's solicited or not, I'll just send her notes on whatever I'm working on at the time, and just work through my thought process that way. And then it'll get transcribed into my Google Drive. So for different stories or characters, I've got specific documents set up. And I keep things very well organized, actually. And the notes get set there, and I'll just come back to them and distill the better ideas and rewrite it so that it just makes sense. I don't have a smartphone. It's very small, but I use it I'll take notes in that, like as a text message to myself when I'm not at a computer. But largely Skype and then the Google Drive documents.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many different ways to do that, right? I mean, I think I've never heard of anybody doing that with Skype. I think that's really interesting.
But I think that's what's important about talking about this topic, too, is, like Bill was saying, there's not one way that everyone does it.
Right.
So we may say something that would spark someone else going, oh, that works perfect for me. I use Skype all the time.
Or something, yeah.
I use it as an instant messenger. I rarely use it for chatting, like voice or anything.
Yeah. And I'm interested, and maybe this can be the follow-up question, but I'm interested to know, like, how often do you guys go back to your notes and go through them and maybe change them? I know you're saying you kind of make changes to your outlines after you finish the story, but...
Well, that's to the outlines. I mean, to the notes themselves, usually it's when I get between stories or between drafts and I'm looking for something to do, I'll go back and look at the notes, and I'll look at some of them and go, this is utter crap, and I'll throw it away. Or delete it, just to get it out of the way. But most of the time, it's just a matter of consolidating. I'm going Australian. Anyway, consolidating and putting things in an order that makes sense to me. So I'll move things around so that I'll see this one next time.
Yeah.
Or I'll have some brilliant title idea that doesn't have a story to it yet, and I'll add that to it. And that's one of my favorites, is to have a great title and no story to go with it. Yeah, that's a great note to have in your...
Yeah.
Yeah, but
usually that would happen with me was,
But flash fiction really prepared us for that now. It's like now you see a title and immediately it's like, oh, this could be a great story.
Right.
Yeah, for me that would usually happen with songs. Like back when I wrote songs, it would always be the title first. I was like, okay, I want to write this, and then I would figure it out. So, Evie, what about you? How do you do notes?
Oh... I pretend like I'm an organized note taker. And I'm not. In fact, I have a tendency of opening. I use Scrivener. I love it. It's my friend.
I've heard many people that use Scrivener and they love it.
I do love it, but because I'm like this fake organized person, like after a few too many files, I'm like, no, this must be split up into better organization, and then I lose them all. Anyway, and I kind of noticed I did that with the last book. And so I ended up having 6 files that I then had to take all my notes and put them into one and like slowly break them down. So I did go over them again, which was fun, but it was a pretty big disaster. So for me, I had to go through my notes on my MacBook and pull them all off of there. Obviously, I use Scrivener as my favorite. And then with this story that I just wrote, I opened Evernote, which I haven't opened in 2 years. And I was like, really? Like, what's wrong with you? So I'm a pretty horrible note taker, but I have a tendency of same thing, middle of the night. But I've learned I'm so ADHD that if anything gets written on a piece of paper, it'll just disappear.
Right.
So since I've been a teenager, I have a habit of having quite literally notes written all over my arms like tattoos.
I used to call that my Palm Pilot.
Yeah.
Right around my palm.
I love it. I just take a picture of
Call
it
this
when
my
I had my
Palm
phone.
Pilot.
So middle of the night, I'm writing on my arm.
Yeah.
That's funny.
And it's fun because same thing. It's not like you can read it.
Yeah.
Now you don't even have a piece of paper. Now you have to try to make the pen work.
It's all
You don't
smudged
know.
now because you sweat in the middle of the night.
You don't know if the pen actually worked right on your arm.
It's just scratches in my arm.
But most of my stories come from dreams, and so really, like, you wake up and first thing in the morning, I'll take whatever I can, which is usually how it gets messed up in the first place. It's that hurry to get it on something
Before you forget it.
Well, and again, very ADHD. I've got about 30 seconds before it starts to fade, and so I've kind of started this last time. I've gotten a little better with keeping my notes a little bit more organized by putting them in file within files broken down.
Yeah.
Can you do headings? Like make a table of contents?
Yeah, I
That's-
have a table of contents, and then I also have Scrivener does these flashcards that are actually documents, and so you can just write
Okay.
anything in the flashcards, which is great. I do the same thing, the one sentence. But when I have an idea, I don't usually write an idea. I write down a scene or a dialogue.
You know, the dialogue is sometimes that's all my note is. Sometimes it's a bit of dialogue, but I have to remember to write down who's saying
Yeah.
it. Give some mental image on the, because if I come back and I see a line of dialogue and I don't have it connected to anything else, it can get a little weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like that needs to be deleted. That didn't make any sense.
It ends up
didn't
being
work
like
there.
that title that doesn't have a story. Kind of
Yeah.
that same thing. I'm like, okay, well, I guess I could use this for something, but
Right.
it has no contact. So I have a tendency of adding pictures to my notes.
Oh, that's
Wow.
good.
Because,
Pinterest.
nice.
yes.
I actually used Pinterest for a while for that, and then I finally just didn't use it anymore. But it was good for a while.
Probably my favorite. And I literally, if I have an idea, I'll go look for a picture that fits to it so that immediately when I look at it, that just sparks. So honestly, this is the first story I've written, period, without looking at Pinterest or picture of anything.
Wow.
Nice.
So
We should have had Pinterest pictures for all of our characters. That's what we should have done.
I have them.
Oh, you have them. But we should post them on the,
I
on the
do have
Facebook
them.
page.
I really dislike Pinterest, so I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Hey,
The few times I use it, it wants me to log in, and it's obnoxious about it. And that just irritates me.
Yeah.
Like, leave me alone.
Yeah.
Well, what
dare
I
you.
liked about it when I was doing a film workshop with kids is I would ask them, if you have an idea and you want to illustrate to me what that idea should look like, find
Yeah.
something on Pinterest and link it. And
Okay,
that
like,
way I could see what they
yeah.
were visualizing, or something like it. And they could they could send me 2 pictures and say this is a blend.
Okay.
I didn't get a lot of response like that, but some of the girls especially were good at that. They would find stuff and send it to me and say this is my idea.
as women, we have a tendency of being more picturesque and more
Yeah,
imagery or whatever you call it.
Picturesque too. That works too.
I don't even know how to use
Ladies
the
are
right
very
word.
picture.
They are there.
Amen to that.
That I am so glad.
So, Stephen, what about you?
So, to piggyback off of what you're saying, I do look up pictures as well when I'm trying to develop an idea, and I'll have like my folder for that, and that's usually just on my computer or whatever. But I use Evernote also just to make sure that my notes are online somewhere and attainable on any device that I have. And that's kind of where I keep my outline notes, and I have a separate note for my ideas that I haven't quite written yet. I just know like a story title or a general story arc or even some dialogue. But then I will break down, I'll have a couple different notes for either like the story outline, and then I'll have another one for characters where as I'm writing characters, I'm just adding those in as they come into the story, and then as I develop, as I talk about what they look like, or maybe certain phrases they'll say, or, certain weapons or things that they're wearing, those all go in there. And that helps for me because I'll have weeks, months, where I'm on a hiatus from a story, and then I'll come back and I'll be like, what did I say about this character? Or and then I'll go and reference that. Or another time, like when I was asking when do people go back and look at their notes, when I finish a draft and I'm going back to rework a draft, I will actually go first and go back through my outline and my notes
and look and see if it's
rework
what
that.
you originally visualized.
Exactly.
Yes.
And
So do
update
I.
it and then start working again from that.
Because you notice that when you don't do that, it's like all of a sudden your story goes so far off on a different direction. You're like,
Well, that's okay
And then I get
too,
stuck.
if it's good. But at the
There's
same
the
time,
problem.
sometimes if there's something missing and you realize there's something missing,
Yep.
going back and looking at your original idea can put you back on the right track. And
Yep.
that's
absolutely.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. And then you're talking about dialogue. Sometimes in a first draft, there'll be a piece of dialogue that I know I want in there. But when I'm doing the rewrite, it doesn't fit in that part anymore. So I will actually leave that as a few paragraph spaces in the document that I'm writing until I'm able to work it back into the story, rather than deleting it from there and putting in a different note and then I'll completely forget about it.
Yeah.
But there's a couple different ways that I'm using my notes, and I really just wish I had more of a sort of a note card app, like you talk about. Scrivener has that, and I like that. And Evernote doesn't exactly have that.
Not quite. No.
And I wish that I could basically do storyboarding on my computer, because if I write on paper, I'm going to lose it eventually.
Right. Yeah, you can tell that you and I seem to take the closest similar notes.
Yeah.
And I think you would really like Scrivener.
And if I can add, the biggest problem for me was finding a note application or program that was going to stay around.
Oh, yeah.
Because
Right.
I've been using computers for years, and I've gone through a number of different applications, including great tools for outlining and organizing a story that just failed to continue to be supported by the manufacturers, and they're gone now. And the data from those also is gone. Trying to recover, that's the tough thing. You need to find a way to keep your notes that is something that you will not lose
using.
5 years from now.
Yep, and that's what happened to me. Is I was using a Mac-specific journaling app, and it was a great app. It allows you to put in links and external notes and pictures and all that stuff. And I had a lot of my fantasy story on there, but then, it stopped being updated, and then I switched over to Evernote, and I did take a lot of the stuff from there, but I know if I need to ever go back and really dive into those notes, I'm going to have to go back onto my old laptop.
Well, I think in the first time that I got to join this group, Bill was talking about back it up. And so I've started putting everything on Evernote, everything printed out, at least once, and then I have it on Word document. I have it in 4 different places because I'm so paranoid now.
I have a whole lot of my early notes are in Notepad, just straight
I keep a lot
text,
there.
because it's always going to be available.
Yeah.
Right.
If you can remember where you put them.
One thing about having multiple programs where you're keeping your stuff is versioning issues.
Yes.
I ran into this problem with my picture book script. And for the life of me, I could find all 4 previous versions of my story, but not the current one, because
the
they're
most
spread out
recent.
over several different programs and emails. So make sure that you've got, you're keeping up with your versioning, especially with big changes. Or
That's another thing I
scripts
do
that you're
too.
writing.
When I get to a final draft or something, I'll email it to myself, and that way,
That's a good
Yeah.
idea.
Mhm.
That
Yep.
way,
I like that idea.
Yeah.
I like putting them in a PDF if I want to lock something. But frankly, I can't get away, as much as I curse Microsoft. I can't get away from Word because I know Word is always going to be
Yeah.
available.
Yeah.
Word's solid.
So for me, here's what I've started to do. Well, within the past 3 or 4 years, but at first I would have notebooks full of everything. I would have all, and then I find all the different characters and their backstories and descriptions, and especially for the Livingstone and the fantasy stuff, because I created so much. I created a world, right? I mean, I
Right.
created the whole
you gotta have
political
the cities,
systems and
yeah.
everything, right? So I transferred all that, but I have everything in either notepads, some sort of notebook, and then I transfer it to some Word document, because then I put it in a folder somewhere, and that's that way I know where it is, or I can search it like on your Mac. You just search like whatever, you know, the title that you whatever. And then I started doing this with, I forget which book it was, but you know, you open up a Word document, you just start. This is what I do, and I just start writing the story. And if there's a problem, or if I name a character, see, this is, and I learned by doing it wrong, right? Not doing it wrong, but like having the problem where like you name a character and you move on, and you're 20 pages later and you want to bring that character back, but you don't remember the name, you don't remember all the stuff, right?
Yeah,
So
dig back through, you know, everything you
I got to
wrote.
dig back through. So
Can't
I
do
just,
a search for the name if you don't remember it.
right.
Yeah.
So I started putting all my notes at the end of the document. Because as I'm writing, all my notes are right there.
They're right where you can find them.
So, like, all I got to do is scroll down to the next page, and I know when I create a new character, I just go down and go boo 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 boo. This is who it is, and then I just keep writing. And whenever if there's and this is what I started doing too, because I like doing things where like you bring back quotes or you bring back. Something you bring back something somebody said and it connects with something later, right?
Yeah.
And if there's a really good line, I'll just copy and paste it down
Into that character
because
section.
that way I don't have to go back. Oh my God, what did he say back in? I don't even know where it is, right? Because I'm in the middle of the story, or it's been a week since I've gotten to it, or something. And so or if there's, you know, like a prophecy that I want to keep using, or if there's something that I want to keep using, I just put, it's really unorganized, but at least it's all on, at least all I got to do is scroll ahead. But I do a lot of my brainstorming. In a notebook. Like I get out a notebook or I buy a new one for $1 or something, and I just start.
I haven't in a while.
I just start brainstorming.
When I write, your idea, I've actually done that many times, what you're doing. But then I find when I get to the end and I want to start cleaning things up that I want to get rid of that. So what I've started doing is creating a separate file, and I use two monitors. So I can have a separate file that's got my character notes, and when I have something like somebody's age or some pertinent information, like a character where I'm only going to see them every once in a while, but I might see them again, I go ahead and put their name. If I can remember, I'll add their name to that file, and that will be a parallel file, and I'll open up both every time I write. And that's also kind of a boneyard file. Like you were saying, you have things that you have a great line that you want to see again later, or maybe it's not the right place for it, but you want to keep it. You know, that'll go over in that same file, and I'll have a segment for names, one for boneyard, one for other miscellaneous notes, and one for, you know, any specific details.
For me, it's a rough draft, right? Well, that Word document is a rough draft.
So
For me, it's always in flux. So like I'm putting stuff at the bottom like, you got to fix the conversation between these two characters.
Yeah.
Like I'm just gonna write it because it's a rough draft. I'm gonna write it, and even though it sucks this time, I know I'm gonna have to go back or I'm gonna have to go back and research more on this economy or something. I'm gonna I just put little notes. But then
research.
When I go back and revise, I've got all those notes, and then I just go and then I fix stuff, and then I you delete that or you go save as and you start a new document, and you go save as final draft. Right? This is rough draft. Now I got final draft. Because I fixed all this. You start marking them off, right? You go, well, what's this? And whatever it is. But for me, brainstorming, it's so old school. But I usually do, after I brainstorm and I feel like I've got a really good idea of the story, I go back. I really do put at least a summary or something in a Word file. Because for me, it's like, that way I know where it is. I think emailing yourself is a really good idea. I've done that a few times. Just email a picture or whatever if you want to try to keep it, make sure you don't lose it, because email is so easy to search.
Just search through.
I know I emailed it to myself, so let's see what emails.
I'll always wind up with a summary that's got those rough notes in it, as well as character details and ages and all that kind of stuff in it, and probably my original synopsis, and then I'll wind up with another file that's got 4 versions of the synopsis, the log line, the paragraph, the short synopsis, and the long one that'll be cleaned up so that anything I get from there is ready to go to an agent or whatever.
You're so organized.
So
I mess that up all the time.
One of the things is Evernote that I like, and I'm sure you could do it on Scrivener and maybe even Word, but you can actually put little check boxes next to things as you're going through, and then when you put it into the story, you can check it off. And then I'll usually highlight for myself where I'm at in the story on like that checklist, so I can look back and go, oh, okay, that's the next one scene that I'm pretty much going
That's pretty
to.
smart. 'cause
Yeah,
the
there is
whole
no way
plot
I'm going
line-
to ever be that organized.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you. I'm just
Right.
telling you, like, that sounds amazing. But for me, it's like, at least I know
You're in the
it's
moment.
in there.
You're in the
Well,
moment.
At least
I
I
just
know where it
never-
is.
Ever thought about that? Because in the short stories, I've always done that for like the unbelievable rough draft, where I'm just randomly typing sentences going, hey, that sounds good, and I'll put a little note on the bottom. I just never thought about doing it for a bigger story. That's brilliant.
And that's one thing about OneNote. You have the check boxes as well.
Yeah.
And I do use, I know this sounds crazy because it sounds like I use 4 different file types. I do. Okay. But I'll always have a
surprising.
rough outline of the story, a very rough page under OneNote, even after I've not just, I'll start off with a story idea, I'll break it out into its own page. And when I get it to second draft and I'm making really rough notes there, I'll do a checklist. This is what I know I have to change. Da, 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 da. I may have a lot more details, like Britt says, in another file or at the end of my file or in the story itself. But I'll have that checklist, so I'll be able to go back
Real quick.
and go, have I done this yet? And by the way, when I'm looking at all these other things I need to do, I need to keep in mind that I'm going to do this as well.
Yeah.
So before I make this change, does this affect any of these other things?
And I think something that really helps in writing is what you said. You use 2 monitors, and so you can have your notes on one, and you can be writing on the other.
I
And
really
I
like
work,
that.
I work on different locations a lot, like at cafes or whatever. And so I'll have my laptop, and I hate going from one program to the next to the next,
I
or
can't do it.
And so on my phone, I'll have Evernote on my phone for my outline to go through, and then I'll have just where I'm writing. That way, I don't have to go
that's
back and
That's
forth.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so small, though. How do you... I
Well,
can't
you know,
go
you're
from
not
big screen to small
you're not
screen.
writing on the phone. You're just using it to, you know.
That sounds great, but it's still too much work.
It's
for
too
me.
much for
I mean,
you.
I'm just saying. For me,
Yeah.
it's like
That's right.
It's like, ooh, I just got to get it down.
Yeah.
Because my brain
And then
can't
I-
do that.
No,
I'm
but
gonna
what you're
forget.
saying about keeping the notes in the same file, I do that all the time. I just do it differently now,
organized.
and I try to move them over to the other file now. So I mean, that's still a great way to do it because it's right there. And when you're working fast, you're working fast. You don't want to mess around.
And it doesn't have to distract you.
Yeah.
Between different different programs and stuff. Yep.
Yeah. When I was a teacher, and I thought I was very unorganized, and I basically had piles, right? I would just have stacks of things on my desk. And I was talking to one of my administrators, and I was telling her how unorganized I was. And she goes, Brett, you do have stacks, but whenever I ask you for something, you know where it is in the stack.
Right.
Like, you know, like, oh, it's in this stack, it's probably right in the middle, and you always...
That's called job security.
No, it's called the organized mess is what my mom used to
But,
call
I mean, you know, you get a little
yes.
older, you realize you have to be a little more organized, you have to be a little more... Especially when you got a lot of different things going on, you got kids,
Yep.
your brain has a lot more things to kind of juggle. You have to find ways to get the ideas down,
Yep.
get your notes down somewhere that's easy for you, easily accessible. And again, I'm just old in the sense of, I'm old school in the sense of, I still just love the act of writing. I just still love the act of, especially when I'm brainstorming and I'm organizing, and then I can like copy it over and rip that out and start over. Like, you know, I just love that part.
And so, if there's anything that you faithful listeners are taking away, we've given you tons of different great ideas, but I think the big takeaway is develop a system, and a system that works for you, and you're going to develop that system out of doing.
And I've got another
And
takeaway
writing.
from that. Make sure you can back it up, and make sure that whatever you use, you're either disciplined enough to translate it to whatever the next application or program is
Yep.
that comes along that you start using, or you're maintain some way to access what you've done, because there's nothing sadder than to have a great idea
And it's on a floppy disk.
that you can't get to. I have a 500
Yeah.
floppy drive in my cabinet over here just in case you need to
Yeah.
borrow it, and a controller.
I might have some floppy disks with a whole bunch of information on them.
Yeah.
On that note, listeners, if y'all have a better idea and have got it down better than we do,
There you go.
Tell us.
Yeah.
please tell us on Facebook. You can leave a message.
If
Yeah,
y'all
we'd
are
love to
like,
share
y'all
that
are a
with
mess, please tell us.
People don't know what you're doing.
Most writers are, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're going to get into the story now. So, let's see, I've written, and then Henri went,
I went.
yeah, and then we had
Tabitha.
Tabitha,
Katie.
which was last time, and I didn't get, I wasn't here for that one. You guys did an amazing job. And this week we have Evie writing for
Abby.
Abby.
We call her Abigail.
Yeah.
Abby.
She goes by Abby. Just go with it. It'll be fun.
So we'll get to it, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Ready?
Yeah. We just want to say thanks for listening to our podcast. If you are interested in learning more about writing and how to become a writer, check out our syndication page, seriouswriter.com. They have articles, resources, classes, videos, and a podcast, the Brew and Ink Podcast. Again, check out seriouswriter.com. Thanks for listening. Midnight Showing, Episode 4, Abigail's Account.
Miss Goldstein, is it?
Yeah, but please call me Abby.
How did you know the deceased, Abby?
I didn't.
But you knew his name.
Yeah, I knew it because over the last 2 days, I've heard it screamed, cussed out, and mocked by many. I don't know him, but I can tell you for certain he wasn't a pleasant man. I personally had a run-in with him on the first evening at dinner. He made a despicable comment about my sex, so I dumped my water in his lap and cursed that chauvinistic pig. I was so furious, I accidentally stumbled into our poor waiter, Henri over there. After storming off, Henri brought me a complimentary drink from the bar and took a moment to check on me. He was so sweet to accept my apology. Wish I could take him home to my mother, but she'd have a cow on the account he's not a Jew. Anyways, not an hour after Aaron's run-in with me, I found his name being screamed by Blake. Up on the Serenity deck, Blake was 3 sheets to the wind and had Aaron by the collar, threatening him about some money he owed him. Henri broke it up and was able to calm Blake down, and Tabitha promised to get Aaron to a show so he could give him another talking to. I'm not sure what Henri's doing hanging out with someone like that pig. What a fraud. That fake New Jersey accent and the name Blake Sheldon. You're not gonna buy that baloney, are you? That man is slimy. From his pathetic pickup lines to his disgusting chest hair sticking out of his hideous Hawaiian shirt. I almost feel bad for Tabitha. Poor brainwashed bimbo. Well, if there's a brain in that bottle blonde's head to be washed. Between the two of them, who's more of a freak, I don't know. Blake made skin-crawling passes at me and Tabitha flipped on me like a bear protecting her cub. Said my aura was too volatile for her precious Blake. I told her I wanted nothing to do with her precious Blake. Then all of a sudden she was all buddy-buddy. She forced a yellow stone in my hand and told me this would take care of all my anger issues. She's a jealous nut. Soon, some men with pretty white coats should be coming to get her.
So, how did you come to sit at the table with a chauvinist pig and a brainwashed bimbo?
Ugh. I tried to sneak in to say hi to Henri when that freak spotted me. Tabitha grabbed my arm and pulled me to her table. She kept insisting that Blake's infamous routine would cleanse me from my negative energy. I was stuck between Tabitha, who had her eyes fixed on Blake, who kept giving her signals. I'm sure it's their signals of love or something gross like that. And I kept having to swat Aaron's hand off my knee. Then Tabitha asked where our drinks could possibly be. I took my escape and volunteered to go check on them, finally making it to the bar where I wanted to be in the first place. Poor Henri, he was swamped. People kept calling him over and waving him down. The most obnoxious of them all, Tabitha, who kept waving at me to bring over the drinks. The rest you know. I offered to take the drinks over. You helped me get them in my arms. You were right there and saw that plainly I didn't slip anything in his drink. I took them over to the table while you took care of that hysterical waitress crying over protocol. Thanks, by the way. Then Tabitha took the drinks from the tray, and I walked the tray back over to the bar to have that witty conversation with you about how this whole ship is full of dull, dim-witted people, when suddenly Aaron keels over, face-planting onto the table. And here we are. I can't prove who's guilty and who's innocent, but if I had to guess, I would say Blake had the best motive. I think he could have easily orchestrated it all and used his little puppet Tabitha to carry it out for him. That's my opinion. Take it or leave it.
on. Well, we got some more clues,
And some more accusations.
more accusations.
I love it. I'm up next, and I got to come up with a good way to get around. I don't know what's going on. I didn't hear this
Yeah,
conversation.
you didn't hear what anybody said, really. All right, well, that is this week's episode and this week's installment of the story. So what's next? You go, and I don't know if there's going to be much voting this week.
You've got a tough choice here.
Is there a question?
Everybody vote for me. I'm Blake. I'm Bill. I'm whatever you want to. No, I'm not whatever you want to call me. But vote for me this week.
I think we should be able to vote on what's going to be your next alias name.
There you go. Yeah. We'll have 3 different options of what you would like to call Blake.
Wait, that's not right. That's not right.
And then a suggestion box.
Right, and a suggestion box.
I've lived through this. Why do it again to me?
This should be fun.
So, like the episode, like our podcast, share it out there, get people involved. We're wrapping up the murder mystery. You got a couple more episodes, so tell your friends about it, and rate and do all that stuff that you do for podcasts. We'd love to hear from you, hear about your ideas for what you do if you're a writer for notes. And
If you want to put some input, we've got a Facebook page where you can leave comments, or a Twitter where you can leave comments. We also have an Instagram that's updated pretty regularly, and you can write comments in there as well.
Absolutely. So, until next time.
Remember to raise that glass.
Oh, yeah.
Raise that glass to inspiration. Oh no, my jelly's leaking.
What?
Okay.
You can cut it out.
So I laughed so hard last night that I gave the kid hiccups.
Oh, that's almost sad, but it's kind of funny actually.
That's awesome, actually. All right.
Okay.
It's your turn, right?
Yeah.
I think I did last time.
You weren't here last
This
time.
is like right here. No, you definitely weren't here last time.
Oh, I wasn't here last time. I did it the last time I was here.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's do it.